Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So a couple of important things I wanted to talk to you about today. Number one, Israel finally rescued 2 hostages. But what are the details about these hostages? Well, they were bodies. So they were dead Israelis in Gaza. And as we know, Hamas holds a couple of bodies of Israelis who were killed during their bombardment of Gaza. So what happened exactly? Somehow Israel reached these 2 bodies. They probably had information about them, but they had 2 soldiers killed in the process. Imagine this. They want to rescue 2 bodies and they have 2 soldiers killed in the process. So in total, they had 4 people killed because of them. Because they want to insist that they want to continue with this ground operation. They're being stubborn. They don't want to negotiate. They ended up killing 2 more people. This is coming simultaneously with probably the worst 3 days for Israel in terms of losses, or at least official public losses, okay? Because previously there were many losses that weren't documented by the Palestinian resistance, but this time they documented multiple of these, and they actually announced today, Al-Qassam Brigades, the military wing of Hamas, that during the last 72 hours, they definitely killed 32 Israeli soldiers. That was documented. Israel yesterday admitted that 8 were killed and 3 were severely wounded, critically wounded. Some of them were commanders in their Golani brigade, one of their top brigades in the Israeli army. So they're suffering a lot of casualties, lots of losses, and they had the top military leaders going out publicly reassuring people, telling them that, you know, it's a war that has been written on us and we have to continue, and there will be losses and there will be sacrifices. The other thing I want to talk to you about is an article that Yediot Ahronot published about a potential restart of the negotiations next week. They said because there is a lot of pressure from the hostages' families, they will have to go into negotiations. The war cabinet had a meeting in Israel, and they're stating that we will not initiate these negotiations, but we are open for them. They want to act like they're not the ones who are going and looking for a solution or negotiations, but the other party is coming for them to tell their public that, oh, look, they're begging for negotiations because of the level of losses and because of the pressure that we're putting on Hamas. Because the narrative that Israel is selling is, we only reached that deal with Hamas previously because of the amount of pressure, which is against the facts on the ground. Well, you're continuing the pressure now, yet you're not getting anyone. As a matter of fact, you didn't take anyone previously up until you came on the table. At least alive hostages, not like the ones who were dead and where 2 further Israelis were killed. So the article is saying there could be a negotiation starting again from next week. Now, there were previous reports that the Israeli government banned the head of the Mossad and his team from negotiating. And they released a statement saying that, no, the Mossad head and his colleagues, they have the full freedom to go and negotiate, to try and reach an agreement where the hostages will be released. Now, this is coming with the increased pressure from the US and the latest statements that we saw about them pushing Israel to come and negotiate and try and reach a solution. There were previous deadlines about it taking up to the end of this year or the beginning of January 2024, and that America will give Israel no more support, or like diplomatic support to be more specific, because they're still supporting them militarily, and that they have to reach a solution. And Jake Sullivan, Lloyd Austin, and Charles Martin, the top figures in America when it comes to the military and the security, were in Israel today. And I want to talk about in a bit about a statement that Gallant made in a joint press conference he had with Sullivan. Apparently, they're coming to put more pressure on Israel that, look, we need to reach a solution and you need to reach a deal with Hamas that will at least give a permanent ceasefire or a long-term ceasefire where there will be a hostage swap or a prisoner swap between you and them. Now, this is coming with conflicting messages. So what did Gallant say in the press conference that he had with Jake Sullivan? Firstly, he was speaking in Hebrew and they were both together. Jake Sullivan was basically staring at him the whole time and he didn't look very pleased. And what did Gallant say? He said that the campaign to dismantle Hamas, now note to the wording, to dismantle Hamas might take more than just a few months. So we're talking about several years. What do you mean exactly? That's coming at the same time that there are other talks about them potentially going into a negotiation to release the hostages. So what's the message that we're receiving here? We're getting conflicting information from Israel itself. We previously spoke about the conflicting messages from the war cabinet, like the fact that Netanyahu is saying they want to demolish the Hamas, and Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, saying that we want to hurt their military capabilities very badly. So they're not on the same page when it's coming to the objectives of the war, and it looks like they're not on the same page when it comes to the day after the war as well. Now note, Joe Biden said another interesting thing very recently. He said that with the current Israeli government, it wouldn't be possible to achieve peace. And he mentioned Itamar Ben-Gvir, but even without Itamar Ben-Gvir, Netanyahu himself showed unwillingness to reach a solution. He said, we won't make the same mistake we made in Oslo, and they basically want to go ahead and control everything and potentially build settlements. There are many figures in Israel, in the government, calling for an all-out resettlement in Gaza, in all parts of Gaza. One MK, who's a member of the Otzma Yehudit, the party of Ben-Gvir, she said that we need to resettle in the whole of Gaza Strip. So we're receiving conflicting messages here, but there's clearly something going on in the background, especially when it comes to the diplomatic solution. Why is that? Musa Abu Marzuk, who is a senior member of Hamas, he said with an interview with Al Monitor today that if there were to be an agreement under the umbrella of the PLO, there will be a de facto recognition in Israel as a state. This sparked a bit of outrage because the traditional position of Hamas as a movement is to never recognize Israel as a state, okay? He later had to clarify it. He released another statement following that. He released another statement following that, saying that they will never recognize the legitimacy of the Zionist occupation, that they will never give up any of the Palestinian rights, and that the resistance will continue up until the refugees are able to return and up until the liberation of Palestine. So that's signaling that they're open for a diplomatic solution, something that they've shown previously, by the way, but have always been stuck with Israeli stubbornness, because Israel has been very stubborn with the PLO directly, who have only chosen the diplomatic route, who said we're no longer gonna fight Israel, we're just gonna work diplomatically. But we clearly saw what results that brings, because for 30 years, both sides have been negotiating, and there has never been a serious Israeli government when it comes to reaching a solution with Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority. The only thing that we saw in the past 30 years is an increase in settlements in the West Bank, a continuation and empowerment for the settlements and for the radical settlers, and a continuation of the apartheid regime. There were no serious steps. They've gone away from the quartet and from previous agreements that they had, and they always try and just manage the situation without taking any serious steps to try and reach a solution. Now, with regards to Gallant's comments about the fact that this war, basically dismantling Hamas, could take more than months, so we're talking about years, what are you going to do with the other areas that are witnessing a lot of tension? What are you going to do with northern Israel? So far, Hezbollah hasn't used all of its capabilities. It's only telling Israel that we're here. They're exhausting their military capabilities and military resources. And they haven't used their whole arsenal. They have a lot of surprises, Hezbollah. They're probably the most sophisticated armed group in the Middle East. So what are you going to do with them? Secondly, how long are you able to tolerate Bab al-Mandab being basically shut? What are you going to do with the Houthis? The Houthis started with seizing ships, taking them to their shores, but now they're actually attacking them. Any ship that deals with Israel is being either attacked or seized. They launched multiple rockets and UAVs on some of them, and they continuously stated that we will not allow any ship that deals with Israel, whether directly or indirectly, to pass through Bab al-Mandab. Now, there are talks about a coalition. France, alongside the UK, the US, Spain, and Italy, apparently are forming a coalition to battle this. So if that's the case, and we've seen France already getting in the battle a couple of days ago, you're talking about a global war. You're not just talking about Gaza anymore. So the whole world needs to understand that Israel is increasing the tensions, and by America supporting this, you're leading to a much wider conflict that can have implications not just in Palestine and in the Middle East, but globally as well. There have been increasing talks about them working on the Ben Gurion Canal instead of the Suez Canal, and they're also not toning it down with the threats to Yemen. They're telling them, we will hit you in the right place and the right time. And if they were to hit them, Israel, they will probably have a massive support from the US as well. And if that's the case, are we going to reignite the war in Yemen again? You're also not taking into consideration that Egypt already broke the Camp David Accords by having so many troops in Sinai. Some reports said that they have over 100,000 soldiers in Sinai, northern Sinai. Areas in accordance to the Camp David Accords should be completely demilitarized. They shouldn't be having arsenal there, massive weapons, tanks, and all of these things. And they have all of them, clearly, and they just haven't really published it. But that's basically breaking the Camp David Accords, and it's saying that, you know, you want a peace treaty, you need to commit to what you said with the initial agreement, that the Palestinians have a right to statehood. Now, the irony is in all of this, everyone's still banging on about the prospect of a two-state solution, which is proving to be completely impossible. So let's say, for argument's sake, you get rid of the Israeli government and you bring a different government that's willing to go down the two-state path. What are you going to do with 800,000 settlers in the West Bank? What are you going to do with all of the areas that you occupied? When you evacuated the Gaza settlements, you spoke about 9,000 people altogether. Compare that to almost 900,000, 900,000. That's a completely different story. Why are there no talks about getting rid of the apartheid regime? The most simple, basic, straightforward thing. Get rid of the apartheid supremacist regime. One man, one vote. The Palestinian refugees can return to their homes, and both the Palestinians and Israelis can vote in a normal democratic country, and whoever wins gets in power. Very simple, straightforward. But yet no one's talking about that, because it seems as if they want to continue the conflict. So for argument's sake, if you do reach an agreement where you have a Palestinian Authority in Gaza and in the West Bank, with the historical problems of the Palestinians, the historical injustices not being dealt with, you're constantly going to have a cause or a reason for a war to break out again. You're not dealing with the root causes of the problem. The refugees, the right to return, the people who were forced out of their homes, that's the main thing, and the Palestinians having a right to say in what happens all across Palestine alongside the Israelis. So these were some of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today. I hope I added some beneficial information, and I'll hopefully see you soon in the next video. Take care.